Great, welcome everybody. My name is Mike Torelli. I'm the manager. I'm the chairman of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency, and today is Thursday, August 26th, and this is a Accelerator committee meeting. Present today is myself and Dr. Vince Odak, as well as our agent, Bill Fioravante. And welcome anybody who is listening in or watching. Basically today, we're just going to go over in a workshop format some very basic stuff about the accelerators that we have under our purview, the leases that we have with our landlords, the tenants that we have, and anything that we want to potentially bring forward to the upcoming next IDA meeting. Joining us is Paul Ruskevich, and before I let him sit down, we're standing up for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Should we take roll call?
Sure.
Torelli?
Present.
Odak?
Present.
Ruskevich?
Present.
Thierry, Dowdett, and Tambury are absent.
Correct.
I will tell you that we do expect our acting counsel, Mr. Chapman, to be here at some point. He's just tied up with something right now.
Yeah. All right, Bill. Why don't you explain to us what we have in front of us?
Okay, I have a lot of fancy documents, colorful documents in front of you. This first one is something that isn't entirely new to you. It's really an updated version of a report I gave you in our very first Accelerator Committee meeting a couple of months ago. It's one at-a-glance look at what our accelerator leases are with our landlords in the 5 locations where we are, and incorporates our subtenants, the leases that we have, the subleases we have with our accelerator clients, so to speak. What we've added were a number of columns in the middle, taxes per month, utilities, other CAMs, and then a total amount for rent plus all CAMs. This is because in a number of locations, as you're seeing here, we're paying taxes or we're paying utilities. In most places, we're paying utilities, internet, heat, whatever it might be, water in some cases, like in Warwick, as you saw that bill last month. And then there are other cases where it's just that CAMs are our share of the common area maintenance, like what our scenario is in Middletown. So you see that really adds, as the chairman has requested, really adds to the total numbers that we're paying each month. So you've seen that in that column again, total rent plus all CAMs monthly, and it's total at the bottom about $45,795. I will mention that number does not, it excludes Highland Falls, that $20,000 actual total now of over $21,000 in rent, plus utilities that we are paying there. And it also excludes 605 Broadway. We have not been paying rent there. We let the landlord know at the end of June that we wanted to renegotiate the lease because we were only using 1 floor of the building yet paying for 2. And I will say both landlords have been very amenable, really try to be as cooperative as possible. So that's giving you a sense of what we've got there. And then we have just a small share of subtenant rents, a few, third column from the right, total subtenant monthly rents. Just for each location, it tells you what we're collecting in rent. You see at the bottom, that's under $8,000. So we're paying somewhere upwards of $38,000 a month for rent and CAMs for most of our net for most of our accelerated locations. One last column there for lease out clause details as well. Yes, sir.
You take a half step back. You said that on the expenses in the CAMs, you have like if there is internet and garbage and stuff like that,
Yes.
that's included in those. So these are full numbers. There's nothing.
Correct.
Else
it includes everything.
Everything. It's more
taxes,
than just CAM
insurance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
any type of overhead, any type of any type of.
If you have any questions, I can drill down.
No. That's
okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you a lot of credit compiled a lot of this. We have a lot of the backup too.
We may in the future, but it's something that this is an all-in, so we can basically look at as a snapshot. $45,795.06 in exposure per month, excluding Highland Falls and excluding 605 Broadway, with potential revenues of $7,783.37.
You mean potential, meaning if they pay?
Yeah.
Correct.
And then
why are you excluding 605?
Right now, we're not paying that. Right now, that's what we've asked to renegotiate. In Highland Falls, same thing, except we didn't try to negotiate.
You do have 605 in here as a line item, though. So,
I do,
but those numbers are not included, or?
well, the rent is not, we haven't been billed the taxes since the last time, so I didn't cross that out yet. And we did last pay the utilities, I think for June.
So there's some costs that are in this number?
There are,
but not all.
and when they're all gone, when we're no longer paying any of those, I'll cross them out. But right now, the rent is the only thing where we've gone a month and not paid.
And that's why the line is through the 10,500.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so 45,795 is our exposure, our liability. Our potential revenue is 7,783. So our potential monthly loss is $38,011.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
And-
And you're going on, and I interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's
The lease out clause, you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just want to mention that is what's in the last column there. No news to you, really. I shared this originally. The other column I want to bring your attention to is more towards the middle. You'll see some red fonts there of dates. Those are the dates that our leases expire for each of the locations that we rent. Really ones that are due at the end of this year, which is I want to make sure we'll get it more than on your radar screen. We need to have discussions about our approach. Those are buildings that we rent on the airport campus, Stewart Airport campus, just down the hill from our main offices. We have we rent 5 buildings there in that little complex. 3 of them are coming due at the end of this year. So I've already reached out to Supervisor George Myers from the town of New Windsor. He's been very open and very cordial, invited me in. I'm going on Tuesday, I believe, Tuesday morning to meet with him, and maybe it's Wednesday, to meet with him and talk about where we're going with those buildings. One idea, for example, is talking to him about then maybe the town taking over as landlord directly to the tenants we have there at the Accelerator.
One point that I just want to make for everyone, while Bill described them as being at the campus of Stewart, it's really not Stewart proper, so I don't have a direct conflict. This is property that is outside of the leasehold of the Port Authority, and this is property that is owned by the town of New Windsor. So in this instance, I don't have a conflict because this is not something that I manage or help solicit for or anything like that. So a little bit different, even though there's a broader area considered the Stewart, I'll say catchment area in regards to stuff. This is not stuff that's underneath the airport proper, I would say. So one of the questions that I would have, and I'll open it up for everybody else, please, it's not my meeting, it's our meeting. Can you detail or show to us how to detail the 3 areas in red, which is building 200, 100, and 300,
Yes.
100, and which tenants are in them?
Yes.
So we can identify which tenants are.
So 200 and 300 are occupied by Mello. They're a manufacturer, mostly of bags, and they do a lot of different things, a lot of backpacks and such. They have 2 buildings on that campus, 200 and 300.
They solely occupy those?
They do. They do. The only thing in, let's see which one, the bottling building. In one of their buildings, there is some shared equipment. We have a laser cutter machine that we purchased, a laser fabric cutter machine, and then there's an embroidery machine that we own, and also there's T-Sex Tukatech machine, which is really a pattern making machine. They are in, let me just confirm.
So help me out here, there's 2 buildings that have the 200 moniker after them. Which building are we talking about when we say, you have 2420 200 and 2422 200? Do we know? I was just looking at the last number.
Yeah, right. Seco Silkscreen is in part of 200.
Which 2? I'll ask that again.
2422 200 is Seco Silkscreen. Those are actually 2 different buildings, I'm sorry. 2420-200 is Mello. That's known as the bottling building because that was the original intent of the Accelerator. They were trying to make it a bottling cluster.
Okay.
That didn't work out, so then they brought in candle makers and all sorts of different ones.
All right.
Eventually Mello.
And then 2422 300 is the rest of Mello.
That is actually, I'm sorry, so 2422, 200, and 300. Those are 1 building, 2 parts. One is Seco Silkscreen, and that is 200. And 2422, 300 is Lombardi Handbags. And that is, there's a story to that. Maybe when we get to that pod, we can talk about that.
Let's concentrate on the red ones first.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, 24, 22, 300, you had 400 monthly rent, and that's crossed out.
Okay, so that's, we'll get into that one. This is one where Lamberti Handbags, they never really got going. They did occupy the space. They did set it up. They're out of Italy. They're an Italian handbag manufacturer, higher end. They were attracted here. They have some associates in New York City. They were looking for a New York presence, mostly to be able to do samples, to make up samples and such of handbags for the New York Fashion Week show, things like that. They were lured here by prior administration and set up shop on the airport campus there, as Mr. Trelli said, on town of New Windsor property. They, because of COVID and Italy being so shut down, they really weren't here for a long period of time. Apparently, there was some misunderstanding, miscommunication, where the previous administration promised the next door neighbor, Secco Silkscreen, that they could utilize some of Lamberti's space while they weren't there. Lamberti was asked if someone could store some things there for a couple of weeks, and this has gone on for a long time. Well, when I first started in this interim position, I reached out to every tenant, of course. I reached out to Lamberti. I heard from their New York contingent, who then pulled me in with Italy. They came to visit me there. It was the first time I'd been to that pod. Well, Secco Silkscreen was occupying that space with equipment and everything. They're still using part of it. They vacated part of it. So Lamberti, we've been trying to perhaps move them. We talk about a space maybe upstairs at 605 Broadway, things like that. But in the meantime, they've stopped paying rent there. So, which I told them was.
But it's being used by another tenant.
It is. So that's.
They're not paying rent?
They're not paying anything additional, which is something else we need to resolve. That's one of our stickier situations currently with our accelerators.
So can you go down, once again, in the New Windsor accelerator bracket?
Sure.
Because that's the one that's, I think, coming due as quick. Can you briefly describe who's in which space?
Sure. All right, let's go from the top.
Yeah.
I apologize for any confusion. It is confusing. All right, the first one is Mellow. This is in a standalone building. It's kind of in the corner across the park.
2416?
Correct.
That's Mellow?
That's Mellow. Across from the Italian American Club is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so right across the parking lot from them. Mellow has that on their own. They have a number of sewing machines in there. The second one is 2420-200. That's also Mellow. That's the former, it's called the bottling building. A lot of people refer to it as that. That's the building. It's a long, skinny one. Used to have a number of accelerator clients. Now just Mellow. They do a number of things in there. And that's also the shared location for the laser fabric cutter and the embroidery machine and the Tucatec machine. So other tenants, even the ones on Broadway and Newburgh, come and use that equipment sometimes. So that's what's in there. 2422-100, that is a small former garage at the end. I was just there because the power went out to these buildings, so I just had to go in there and flip the circuit breaker switch. And it went out again a little while ago, and they went home, and I'm going to go do that at 7 in the morning. But in the former garage next door there is Inform Lightworks, also known as Lightsome Studios. It's a small space, 500 square feet. These gentlemen are doing, two RPI grads who are doing LED lighting design, basically, out of there. That's their craft, that's what their day job is, and so they're in there as well. They're in a small space right next to Secco Silkscreen. The next one, 2422-200, that is Secco Silkscreen, adjacent to Inform Lightworks. And 2422-300, that again was intended for Lamberti. They had they had items in there, and Secco has been using some of that space. Is that clear on the Windsor pod?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Is there any space in any of the New Windsor pods that is currently not being rented? Is there any vacancy in there?
Except for that space that's kind of in dispute between Secco and Lamberti? No.
Okay.
That is full.
All right. And on the utility side of things, we're paying the full utilities on all of the buildings, or is anyone sharing in that?
No, we're paying all that.
Okay.
Something else that's been talked about is, if not upping rent, then having them share
That's
more
close
of
to
the cost.
$3,500 a month for utilities, just for that one, sorry, excuse me, I gotta get.
And these are manufacturers. They're using heating equipment, high-powered equipment, a laser cutter as well. So with these manufacturers, there's a lot of power being consumed.
I think it would make sense to have them sharing part of that cost. I mean, it's the nature of their business.
It is.
Sorry, sure.
Paul was just commenting that it would be fair for tenants to pay their share of utilities.
Many of these leases in New Windsor started in 2016 or 2017. We see that in the column toward the 2/3 of the way over. How long have the tenants been there? Have they been there, are these original tenants? Are these been there longer than, say, a couple of years?
I think these dates that you're seeing for lease began is when most of them came. Well, actually, in this packet, we have more of that detail.
Okay.
So this is the master sheet. This is information for all our subtenants at each pod, each accelerator location. So flipping through, the second one is Avenue of the Americas at the Town of New Windsor portion of the Stewart Airport campus. Original date of occupancy, some go back to May 17, Mello, November 18, Lombardi, December 18, Secco, and November 19 of Inform Lightworks.
Okay. And in this instance, we have 3 subtenant agreements, Lombardi, Mello, and Secco, which have all expired, correct?
And one coming up in November.
And one coming up in November.
That's right.
Okay.
And just to talk about what's empty, what's full, because you'd asked about that.
Yeah.
Let's go to Broadway in Newburgh. There's 2 buildings, 603, which is a very small building. We pay $3,000 a month for rent for that. There are 2 businesses on the ground floor. Shelley Scott, apparel manufacturer and designer, and Mackie Rondon, who's a footwear, shoe product designer. And then there had been, when I first arrived, Inner Beauty handbag manufacturer on the second floor. I got a very, very small space. And I was working with her on a couple of things. She got a full-time job, and she informed us that she was leaving. So she left in July. So that is vacant upstairs at 603. That could be filled with someone else.
Yeah, I was looking at the variations in rent, the rent paid. The other is the rent paid a function of certain things we have to look at, apart from the location and the building, everything contribute to the rent paid. I mean, in terms of, because I see different rent variation here.
Yeah, it varies pretty significant there, Vince. It goes from $4 up to $23.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's weird that we're paying $23 for a garage, but obviously it's something that was done prior to us, so.
Yep.
I'm not sure if these are market rents or if these are above market rents, but I would question at least some of them. But that's something for us, if we decide to move forward and keep any of them, it's something to physically, ask staff to do comparables on, do write-ups on, to make sure that we're not overpaying, those types of things. But, that's a good point, Vince, is that we have a wide-ranging, very wide-ranging.
And I'll just note, because I don't know if I did in our first accelerator meeting, that for New Windsor, for those buildings, we did the IDA paid for all of the outfit of those buildings, all the build out. They were in terrible shape. A couple of buildings were being rented before by some of the third-party Amazon warehouses. They were very rough. I saw a couple of them on my own a long time ago. So we did pay to build all that out. In Warwick, the town paid for the build out there of the Manor House. In Middletown, The IDA paid for a portion, and TSEC paid, I think, over $100,000 for the build out there. In Newburgh, we paid for most of the build out there. The Bloomers do say they've done a lot in kind. I don't have that documented or itemized, but we did pay for a lot of that build out. Falls, of course, nothing was done, and our headquarters have been renovated a couple of times to accommodate all the changes, and of course, the IDA funded that as well.
Great. The question I would have, that I would raise, it doesn't have to be specific, but in general, in our subleases, do we, not knowing this, I'll ask a very basic question, do we have subleases for all of our subtenants? Do we have an actual document or an agreement?
We do. There's only one or two that I've not found a lease for that I think it was kind of a, handshake arrangement, like including a second space for a media company that's in Middletown. But generally, there are subleases for everyone. Langdon, I believe we shared those with you, so you can look at them as needed, right? I think
Donna in my office is taking a look and trying to rewrite them, so as they come up, we can.
Yeah. Is there one thing that we would have, and we're not making determinations tonight, but we do have some decisions that have to be made at our next meeting, potentially for the 3 buildings in red, right? So one of the ideas is that at the next meeting, you would have some more additional details, and you may know them right now, but like in those subleases for those 3 buildings that are in red, are there any provisions where we have to give notice? If, say we want to make a decision next month, is there any provisions in there where we have to give 30, 60, 90 days notice to both the landlord and or the subtenant, or both? We would want to know that prior to making a decision on those. And I know you're meeting with New Windsor, you said, this upcoming week, which is good. It's good to open those lines of communication and potentially negotiate, but as a determination that I believe we'll look at making at the next board, whether we want to move forward, whether we don't want to move forward, but some of that backup detail will be key,
Sure.
Especially when it comes to notification, both to landlord and to subtenant. Because we don't want to catch anybody off guard. That's why I think having it at the September, at least at 3 months ahead of time, where we're making decisions about stuff is key, because it gives time for people to, it gives us a little bit of time to look at the stuff prior to this.
Sure.
But then at the meeting, it gives them, whether it's landlord and or subtenant or both, it gives us time to either renegotiate, it gives us time to terminate, it gives us time to move people in or out, it gives time to transfer utility, there's a time aspect to it. I am kind of, I know next week we're meeting about audit financing and potential budgeting, but this is directly involved with that, because you would take that $45,000 plus exposure or liability times 12, and that's a major key part of our carrying costs for our upcoming budget. So there's going to be a lot of pluses or minuses or whatever we want to do, but if everything stayed the same, that number times 12 is an immediate exposure just for this one program, let alone staff salaries, all the other, I'll say, liabilities that are on that side of the ledger. So a key point there. One thing that we probably have in the details is the amount of rent that we're paying per square foot compared to the amount of rent our subtenants are paying per square foot. So if we can compare, we'll just use New Windsor as an example. And that would be on page 2 of the stapled one, if you guys want to turn to that. Bill, if you want to walk us through that. So if we have Lightsome, we'll just use that as an example.
Right. So they're down on the large master sheet, the colored sheet there. So they are 2422-100, the third one down in New Windsor.
Okay. So that one there, we're paying $23.81 per square foot.
Right.
but charging them $4.76 per square foot.
Correct.
It's a big delta.
Sure is.
Granted, it's not big space, but it's a big delta. And I don't want to open up a can here, but do we know how these were approved in the past? Were these things presented publicly at an IDA board meeting and voted upon individually? Or were these just deals that were done by the prior administration and never, I'll say, publicly disclosed, or even, is there a vote? Like, did somebody actually vote to charge someone $4.76, knowing that they were paying $23.81?
If I had to guess, I'd say no.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
I don't know the answer, but we're gonna have to
Yeah.
go through the minutes of the
Yeah.
meeting actually, and
You know, I mean, that's, and I don't mean to pick them out. It's not their, you know, they got to deal with, they negotiated, which remember. But it's something that I think moving forward, I know if we do a deal, we've all agreed that any expenses are going to come in front of the board, be presented by staff and by consultants, and we'll vote on it based upon its merits. I do worry that some of these were not voted on, or voted on by merits, or voted on by actually disclosure.
it's a great question.
You know?
It's honestly great. It's one of the things that is moved towards civil litigation.
Yeah.
That's all part of the
Yeah.
damages.
Now, granted, we inherited this, so we're gonna work with it, we're gonna
Mhm.
fix it the best that we can, but that's just a glaring difference, or a glaring, I would call it a delta, but a change, that's just a glaring, you know, in one instance. And I don't mean to pick them out, because I don't even know them, and I'm sure they're great people.
Yep.
But like, in a perfect sense, that delta would be a lot closer, right? You know, it's one thing to have an accelerator program where you're paying $5 a square foot and you're charging $4 a square foot, and after a couple of years, they're paying the $5 a square foot. You know,
Right.
you graduate.
Yeah.
And that's just on the rental side. You know, we have a monthly utility exposure of $8,555. That's pretty significant, in regards to, as a percentage. You know, 8555 is X percent of 45,795, you know, it's,
So is that for all buildings?
Yes.
The utilities combined 85?
that's what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah.
It looks
Okay,
like
got
for
it.
all of
Oh,
them.
got it, right here.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. And you can look at a ratio on the large sheet. If we're potentially billing 7783 and it's costing us 21,102, right there, it's really, we're only collecting about a third, or billing a third. I don't want to say collecting, because there's another standalone sheet that we talk about.
Yeah.
Stuff
Look at our
that's,
total monthly rents, we're not even covering utilities.
yeah. That's another way to look at it. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Paul. Great point there. You're right.
And then you get the other cans.
Yeah. Yeah, the garbage, the internet, you know, it just keeps on adding on. I know publicly, whether people criticize this program or not, or whatever, they always say, is it worth its weight in gold? Like, is it worth the jobs that are being created? One column that we don't have is a job creation number, right? Not that we need it today, not that we need it tomorrow, but I think when we make determinations, if we're gonna, like, say on these next three, maybe for preparing for the next month's meeting, and to talk about those three, we would talk about them individually, because they're really individual deals, but also, what is the impact, you know, how many people are at these?
Sure.
You know, you could almost use that number to say, what is our cost per job, you know, when it comes down to it, when it gets to that point.
I think that would be all new metrics,
Yeah.
and, because I've heard the previous administration report on jobs created, cost per job, and when there were other employees that were still there when I came on board that I inquired about, where did these numbers come from, they had no idea.
Yeah, so it's not hard to find.
I really honestly
You know?
believe they were, and I'm not just trying to pile on here, I
Yeah.
believe most of them were fabricated for the audience to see.
Yeah, and basically, just you interpolate these numbers, you find out the FTE, and that's how much it is per FTE, you know, it's not a hard number to come up with. It's also something to realize that, oppositely, how much are we expending for each job, you know? you know, and I'm sure each one's gonna be different. I mean, if you compared each one of these line items, if so-and-so has 2 jobs and it's costing us X, and so-and-so has 100 jobs and it's costing us only 2X, well, we're getting a bigger bang for our buck for that 100 job creator type of thing.
Absolutely.
And this could even be interpolated into our applications. You know, while we don't have carrying costs there, it's based, you know, you could base it upon incentives, you could base it upon, you know, many different metrics that you can potentially use that on. But it's something to think about, especially during the presentation part. So what we would ask, I think, is at least on these next 3 that are coming due, what I would like to be able to have a discussion and potential vote on at the next meeting, is to have the details into that level. You know, do we have termination clauses with the landlord, or do we have notice clauses if we do make a decision? What's the repercussions of us making a decision one way or another? And then we'll make a decision. You know, I mean, I think that, I think we have enough info. We've been digesting this now for a couple months, and I think that we have the information at our ready to be able to help that. Now, if we choose one way or another, it's indifferent. We're going to be able to help us. We'll be able to, our partners, the state agencies, the federal, will be able to help these individuals and/or companies continue on, whether they want to stay in those locations, whether we want them to stay in those locations, they're going to be part of it. It'll be all based upon what we want to do, but it's not like, I feel like, I hate to use the word stranded these days, but I don't feel like we would strand anybody. This is more of a business decision based upon what's best for the county and what's based for the mission of the IDA and the Capital Funding Corporation. You know, what's the best bang for our buck? You know, and we can compare this type of program eventually to a shovel-ready program, or to a alternative incentives program, or to a, correct me if the PPP loan program type thing. You know, we can compare all these different types and
Where we
see
get
what,
the most ROI.
yeah, what's the best ROI, and maybe, and that's just not us. We'll look at maybe what others do at other IDAs or things, and see maybe they have a program that's even better than these that we could potentially do. So I think we'll always be in the game. It's just that our game may not always be baseball. It may be basketball, it may be hockey, it may be football, you know, it may be a different game depending upon how we want, and obviously dictating by the economy and who's wanting to do what. I mean, obviously you need entrepreneurs to start businesses, or you need existing businesses to want to come here, or you need existing businesses to want to expand here. You know, you have all those multiple levels of macroeconomics that are in key. So, all right, I spoke to them.
All right, so I'll get that information for that.
Yeah, this is great detail, and I think what we would ask for, Bill, is to talk about them each individually, because what might be good for one building may not be good for another, because as Vince said, one building is totally different metrics than another building.
Right.
It's not, they're not all at $5 a square foot or at $23 a square foot. You know, there might be some give and takes there, and we, you know, and then we also would want you to, you know the lay of the land. I say that tongue in cheek, but you know the subtenants that are in there, so we know what they're looking. Are they in a growth, or are they, you know, they may tell you, hey, this is great. We've used our stuff. We're planning on going into 5,000 square feet down the road. Great, success. Everyone, you know, get the ribbons out and let's help them move. Or like the one lady, she decided to go work instead of own a business. Yes. Hey, everyone makes those decisions, and so now we have empty space. So now, you know, that's something to think about. What do we do with vacant space? Right? You know, there's many different ways, but I think for the next meeting, the idea is to make presentations on these 3 that need decisions to be made.
Okay. Can do that. Sure. Great. And can I have a meeting with Supervisor Myers from Town of New Windsor? Just verify when that is. Yeah, that is on Tuesday morning. Really, my objective there was to give them an update of where we are with the IDA, really, you know, what my role has been there now, obviously talk about the timing of these buildings, and see what the options are. I would like to float the idea that we've talked about a few times as a possibility, which is, would the town be interested in being the landlord to these tenants directly? So I just, you know, as far as direction from the board, can I just explore different options?
Yeah, I mean, I would think you would explore anything. It's not something that we would vote on. It's you as our agent meeting with a business partner of ours, it just happens to be a municipality instead of a individual or a corporation, and you would work with them to figure out, hey, if we do want to keep on going, what would the asking rent be? Or would you like to, like you said, be the landlord directly to these tenants? Or they may say, you know what, we're gonna use the buildings, we want everybody out. You don't know what's gonna happen until you meet with them, but it's something to have done prior to us meeting, to when we have a presentation, because that's, like, I'll say on the ground, or like boots on the ground information. That would be on any of these whenever we schedule them to be talked about, definitely, whether they're individuals or whether they're municipalities, you gotta talk to them. You gotta talk to them. As well as the subtenants, you get a good feel.
The next priority to me is on the smaller packet, which is all our individual locations, is the top priority being these red dates again, which denote sublease agreements that we have that are expired or expiring soon. So we just need to have an approach there. I am looking through a couple of sublease agreements. Of course, we have many of them, more than 20 of them. I think they are very similar, though. I don't see any sort of termination restrictions there for us, but I certainly will lean on the county attorney's office for proper review of those. But otherwise, we have to determine how we want to approach extending these leases, making a tenant change, again, whatever it might be. Obviously, some of that is related to what are the lease terms for the buildings that these clients are in. So if we're locked in, for example, we talk about these 3 buildings in New Windsor coming due at the end of this year. Beyond that, those 3 buildings, we don't have another lease coming due until, I think, end of May of 2022.
But you have these subleases, and you make a
We
good
do.
point.
Exactly.
These are also things that need to be discussed, especially for the past due ones,
Right.
at the next board meeting.
Absolutely.
So in this instance, I know that you're gonna possibly have to work with council, because these subleases are expired. So they're basically I'll say in a holdover type status. That might be an official word, and I don't know if I should use that, but I always use that when it's kind of being held in limbo until you make a decision.
Right.
And some of these have distinct, metrics to them. We'll use on the first page, go to the code. We're paying $9 a square foot, they're paying $9 a square foot. That's a break even to a point. I mean, yeah, we're paying CAM and utilities and all those extra things there, but the one next to them is not. They're only paying $4.50 a square foot. And then then you have another one at $9 a square foot. So, I also want to make sure that we're not, and I hate to use this term, but I want to make sure that we're equal to everybody. We treat everybody
Equitably.
equitably. I mean, it's one thing if you sign a lease this year and someone else signs a lease next year, there might be a little bit difference there. But if they were all around the same time, eventually everybody should be roughly at the same level. That's what you strive for. You don't want to give a better deal to one over another, and it doesn't make sense to when you're in the same building. The building has costs. You're creating this. It's based upon square footage, so that's a variable. But when it comes down to what we charge, it's something that should be equitable.
Right.
We don't want to discriminate. We don't want to, be a landlord that charges X over there one thing and then Y over there something else, and it just opens it up to too many different things. So,
Great.
but those would be a new type of sublease agreement that we would have to have written, voted upon and reviewed, and we would institute with that. But it comes along with a lot of these things, because there's, at least on the first page, there's the first 3, the middle 2, another one, the majority, if not all, on the Middletown one have to be decided upon.
And again, our lease isn't up there until late August of 2022 for that space, our own lease.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'd like to know, Mr.
And
Chairman.
some have been there, I'm sorry, and
Oh,
some
sorry.
have, like the first one, not to single them out, but they've been there since September 1st of 2016.
They were. And many of those got 18 months free rent, by the way. That was an incentive we had, and we passed that on to all the tenants. So a number of them were there for free for the first 18 months or so.
Now, that price per square foot, $9, that's for the entire building, all the pods?
No, that $9 is,
Well, yes, if you look at the big picture,
are we looking at the big one?
No.
the big one,
Yeah, thanks.
we're paying $9.
Right.
And then on the small one, that top tenant is paying $9. But the next one's only paying $4.50.
Okay.
But then the next one's paying $9, so,
It is inconsistent.
So in other words, all those empty pods, we're paying $9 a square.
Yeah.
Correct.
yeah, and getting nothing out of it.
exactly. One other thing I'd like to note, this came up with, the county attorney's office made me aware that's very early on, that the subleases, most of these sublease agreements, also require, I'm just trying to see the language here, specify that the tenants need to be engaged in the creation, expansion, and retention of businesses and high-paying jobs in Orange County. The rent you pay is subsidized by the Orange County IDA for these purposes. My point is, they're supposed to be growing. They're supposed to be adding jobs.
It's not just meant to be a storage location.
Correct.
Or
And
something,
there
or
are some
as a
examples
hobby.
I know, because I know all of them. I've been to all these spaces. I've spoken to most of them many, many times. Some just aren't engaged in really those activities. Some of it, I will admit, is because maybe they're, to a degree, because there hasn't been that same side of oversight, sense of accountability, some sort of organized curriculum and milestones I talked about from the management side. It was promised and talked about a lot, but never really actualized. But, you know, a lot of the onus is on them. They're in these businesses. They got a lot of support, and including just the subsidized rent, in order to grow. And many aren't doing that and aren't focused.
Well, when you start talking about cost per job, then if they're not meeting those expectations,
Right.
then they probably shouldn't be there.
So I think on a priority level, we would talk about the deals we would have with landlords as a priority. And then as as 1B would be the subleases that we have that are passed down.
Right. I will work with the county attorney on those. You see, it's most of them, frankly, except for Warwick, because they just moved in this past March.
Yeah.
We're not gonna count Highland Falls. But everyone except Zeal is due on Broadway,
Yeah.
and pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back on that as the second one as well, because that leases that are expired are coming due.
Well, obviously, because the first batch will affect the second batch. If we make determinations on the 3 that are coming due with our landlord, it'll affect whether we even entertain entering into subleases or not. You know, so one's dependent upon the other, obviously.
The next report, I'd like to keep this private only because I don't want businesses, private business being shared, but you see the aging report. I will first qualify that first column, 1 to 30 days. So that includes some rents that were essentially current, but maybe, they're a week late, something like that. So it's a little bit misleading, that first column. In some cases it's not, but in some cases it is. So just keep that in mind. It's a tremendous list, obviously, huge number. I apologize that we really didn't tackle it earlier. I did ones that I knew were egregiously late. I had approached a couple of months ago, but we had problems actually generating this report out of QuickBooks because some of the accounting was not done really to make some payments go against invoices it was very, very confusing, very convoluted. We've been cleaning that up, and this is really Kelly going month by month, looking at what was charged, what was paid. So we believe this to be very accurate at this point, but it was delayed. But you see, it's a huge number there. And I don't want to call anyone out specifically, but there is a business in Newburgh that was one of the stars of this accelerator, and they're really struggling. They haven't been there. They've only been there a few days out of the last few weeks. They're having challenges. They're in arrears with us. They're in arrears with some of our partners. So my point is, there are some businesses that are kind of against the ropes. Obviously, COVID is not helping that.
Sure. Do we have a collection policy?
I haven't found one for that, but that's something else I want to work with the county attorneys on.
I seriously doubt it. I mean, I'll just tell you honestly, we've gotten these lease agreements. The IDA staff may have sent it to my office before this, but I got them in front of my eyeballs yesterday. So we're sitting down, working with our lead real estate attorney, trying to recraft leases.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like everything else, just what's the priority of work?
So that would be something to think about as part of, I'll say, a governance committee meeting, if we want to, even potentially even into the bylaws. I don't know if it's bylaws worthy. I'm not.
So if I understand the sheet right, through all our tenants, we have 37,000 receivable, right?
Yes.
That's overdue.
Yes.
Right.
Again, a share of the first column, say
Mhm.
6,500, you know, maybe they could be coming in any day, to put it that way, but
Right.
roughly we're,
That doesn't bother me as much as
no.
the other three columns.
Normally, I would say that it's call worthy after 30 days.
Mhm.
After 90 days, it's serious enough, I think, that most landlords and/or businesses would start a process, a collection process.
Mhm.
That collection process could be a payment plan, it could be legal recourse, it could be whatever. But it could lead to termination based upon what the parameters are within a sublease, or, you know, a subtenant agreement or a sublease, that if they're X amount in arrears, it could be a terminationable.
Terminable.
Yeah, terminable, I don't even know if that's the word. You could put a bull on anything, I guess. You know, it's something to consider. I mean, it's something that, you know, there's gonna be businesses that are successful that can pay their bills, and there's other ones that aren't. And, you know, we're in this, yeah.
If they're not paying rent, which is extremely reasonable in most of these cases, then the probability of a success or growth is minimal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because these are, like you said, there's much reduced rent, out there in the real world, and rent is going for a premium right now, especially in this area.
Yeah.
Because of these types of spaces,
Yeah.
warehouse
Warehouse,
manufacturing.
manufacturing, industrial spaces.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, you talk about payment plans and stuff, but if they're already 90 days out, that
Yeah.
situation's not likely to improve.
It occurs to me, there's one business responsible for 73% of the
Yeah.
arrears this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with 37,000 in arrears, at the end of the day, you take away one business,
Well, yeah,
you're 11,000, you're,
Yeah.
you're 10,200 in arrears,
yeah.
which,
And 6,500 of that is 1 to 30 days, so.
I mean, I've never been a landlord, but at the end of the day, when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 tenants, 72% of the bad rent is ascribable to one.
Yeah.
That's,
It's worth noting.
Yeah.
I mean, only because they got the public screen going, and the public's gonna go, what do you mean you're $37,000? It's one tenant, so that may be one that we have to really
Really focus on.
focus on.
especially since that tenant should be doing well.
Right.
And that may be one where we right away put my staff into a legal posture with them and remind them of their obligations.
I mean, from what I was told, and the tour I took before
Yep.
all this happened, they should be doing extremely well.
Exactly, they're not. Some of it was, in my opinion, an act after I talked to some of the clients out there and what they were instructed what they were instructed to say or act and who to give credit to and all that. Some of it was a charade for sure, and some of it's just been challenging times, no question,
Well,
for them in particular. But, I agree, from what you saw and the way it was, they should be going the other direction.
and especially during COVID, they should be doing.
Right, for that end.
Not knowing off the top of my head, but just to ask you out loud and for everyone, did any of our Accelerator subtenants take advantage of our PPP program?
Yes,
Oh,
our resiliency loan, yeah, there were a
Okay.
few that did. yes.
Good. I didn't, not matching up to this,
Of course.
putting them side by side, you want to make, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Has that been helpful for them?
Yes, I'd have to match it up to see who
Yeah.
the result is, but yes, for certain. Look, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people that benefited greatly, that it helped save their business, absolutely. We've had a lot of positive
That's
feedback
great.
on that, definitely.
That's good.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that more in OCFC, meetings and when we look at what's still out there, because that eventually has to sunset. We have to
Right.
eventually close that program out, in the very near future.
So we'll research to make sure there's no collections, policy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's something I'd work with the county attorney's office on again.
Just so we treat everyone the same. It's,
Exactly.
you know, 1 to 30, it might be a call, 30 to 60, it might be a really strongly worded letter. You know, after 60, hey, you know, our lawyers are gonna contact you and we're gonna work with you, but you need to figure this out or we're gonna go to the next step. Type thing, you know, I mean, cool. This is all great detail, Bill, and
Okay,
thank
great.
you for, putting it together and highlighting the stuff that is either expired or going to be expired soon in red, because it definitely stands out when you're looking at stuff, so you can almost try to envision or plan how we need to talk about things in the very near future.
Great. And I want to thank Kelly again, helping to compile all this information. Obviously, if I'm not doing it, she's doing it. She's done a tremendous job, so I want to thank her.
Great job.
Cool. The only other thing that, and I'm not sure if it's a discussion for tonight or to set for the future, but, and we've already gotten into a bit of it, is what approach do we want to take with the accelerator? You may want to wait until you have a permanent CEO. I imagine that makes a lot of sense, and see what their direction is, what their ideas are. But, you know, where are we headed with the accelerators? What's our yes, we need to resolve where we're going in terms of our leases with our landlords and our subtenants, but what's the greater plan? Do we want to institute an actual curriculum, milestone, things like that, to hold these tenants available, accountable for as long as we will have them? Are we not worried about that? Do we want to change the tenant mix? Again, do we want to, I don't want to say push any out, but the ones that really need to fly the coop, need to leave the nest, or haven't really been making the right effort, or are majorly in arrears, whatever it might be, and do we want to backfill them? So those are just things that, again, you may want to wait till you have someone in this position permanently, but those are the things we'll need to decide, and the directions we need to set pretty soon, I think.
I think also that probably related to the collection policy, everything that we talked about, you know, because once we have that written, the legal process in the future, what if someone refuses to leave completely?
Yeah. I know one of the things that I would wait for, or not wait for, but want to better understand is, I know that the legislature yesterday met and they talked about potentially talking about any of our agreements or contracts being voidable. Were they entered into under pretenses that were not on the up and up, I'll say. I don't know what the correct word is, but that is something that I'll quote with our counsel said, it might give us ammunition to make a determination.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is, and I think that's happening soon. I don't think it's happening tomorrow, but it's happening within the next couple months, and that's all stuff that Discovery will figure out, and you know, we'll be either part of it or we'll be let know of what's going on, and that's something that, you know, will help us base some of these decisions upon. So
Some of these numbers make you wonder.
yeah.
I think that's the premise the county attorney first raised, and that is the basis for our letter to Mr. Minicozzi about getting out of the Highland Falls accelerator contract, saying it was void, it was entered into fraudulently, and therefore it's void. I mean, that's been the basis for his arguments there, so.
Yeah. So it's something to think about. Not that we're going to decide tonight, but it's, you know, when you have these various leaseholds at various levels per square foot with various termination dates with no out clauses. You know, that's unheard of. I mean, most professional, I don't want to say professional, most entities that have a government oversight and/or are in the government side of things, most of them, if not all of them, whether if it's a by-state agency or if it's a transit, all have 30-day out clauses, terminable on 30 days notice, sometimes even by either party. It gives you those options that you need.
Well, especially with this type of program where you have a substantial amount of risk.
Yeah. I mean, I can't envision this, but imagine if we inherited something where it was and we didn't have the money to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? That would be not only embarrassing to the county, but it would be extremely serious if we couldn't pay our liabilities to the power company or to the landlords or to stuff like that. We're not at that point, and we've saved a lot of money by doing the stuff that we've done in the first 6-7 months that we've been doing this. I say 5-6 months, whatever.
Right, but that being said, if we
That being said,
take some kind of corrective action here.
yeah, because the lines are going like this.
Right.
You know, we need them to come back to more reality, I think. But great points, and it's something that we'll discuss again. But I think having these spreadsheets, I think it's really easy to understand. You see it, you take a look at what's the stuff that's in red, it's broken down by facility, all those things, and then you have different stuff and you have the arrears. I think it's a great way to put it together. Yeah.
Great, any further improvements?
It's a great snapshot, you know, it's only a snapshot from today, and this could change, but, you know.
Great. That's all I want to cover this evening.
Yeah.
I'm just curious on this piece of paper, goods in a coat. What did they produce?
That's a candle maker, actually.
Oh, okay.
I had updated I think you had asked for some descriptions. I had updated a spreadsheet. I wonder if you saw that, but, I have a summary. I'll resend it to you, sir, that explains everything. But you can ask me now for any of them.
Oh, yeah, I did.
They use a lot of power too in Middletown, frankly. There's a lot of heating to heat up the wax and such.
The milkman, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
You know, lastly, I'll say, because I want to close the meeting out, but, we can also take a look at some of the successes that we've had. And maybe there's a mentor type thing that can happen here. If there is a company that's in an accelerator, but if there's a company that we've already helped that's doing very successfully, and if someone only needs 500 square feet, maybe there's a marriage we can put together to have someone who has probably maybe larger experience, more staff, bigger facility, lower overhead, and maybe we can marry some of them with some of our existing businesses that they can help grow to the point where then they could go out on their own. Because I'm not, and maybe some of these can go out on their own today, but maybe others need a little bit of help. And I think having, Bill knowing a lot of those companies and our partner agencies knowing those companies, we might be able to make some marriages. If there's I don't know, if someone makes a product and someone else makes something, maybe not the same exact product, but something in that same industry,
Complimentary.
like a compliment. Thank you. Maybe there's something that can happen there.
I think it's a really interesting idea.
And maybe it's off hours. Maybe if they're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, maybe the secondary one comes in the evenings, or it comes in on the weekends, or, share some space. There's a way to maybe even lower their costs. Especially if we get a partner, like as a company mentor type thing. I think that's something to
It's a
explore.
really interesting idea, definitely.
And it's something to explore because, one of the things of the IDA is to increase our tax rates, right? And to create some jobs and stuff. Wouldn't it be a great success story, say if we have a company that has 50,000 square feet and someone needs 3,000 square feet? Well, maybe that company comes and says, I want to put an addition on my building. I want to make 10,000 square feet more for me. And oh, by the way, I'll do 3,000 feet for somebody else. And maybe there's even an IDA project that we could help incentivize to help do something like that. I mean, that would be like a win-win. It would be like a grand slam, trying to it would help everybody.
Yeah.
And it would help existing businesses, smaller businesses. It's not always about the $500 million businesses. It's about a lot of these smaller businesses too. We want to be able to help them all.
Definitely explore that. I like that idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Especially since I think we helped a lot of those existing businesses, over the last decade. Whether it's the IDA or other partner agencies or.
There may be some former AWOL clients, and that's a sore subject probably for all of us, because it really was a real money sucker, frankly, for, if I could be so crude. But there were some clients that were helped. At what cost is one of the questions, obviously. But there were that, perhaps could be candidates for this. I think it's a really interesting idea to explore.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially on the manufacturing side.
Exactly.
Distribution.
That's what mostly AWOL manufacturing.
Yeah. I mean, distribution, you could distribute as long as you have a building and a door and a truck, you could distribute.
In fact, at this stage where we have microscopic vacancy rate on those buildings right now, if anyone's got space, I think it's
But on the
gonna share it
manufacturing
at a
side,
premium.
and it might be some places for, I don't want to call them sub-A space, but it could be places that are not always the go-to places where manufacturers go to. Could be our little villages or something that someone may have 10,000, they may have 10,000 square feet and they have 1,000 square feet that they don't need, or that it's something that may be able to push stuff to not always to the core locations, to some of the more rural
Well,
locations.
that's definitely what I was getting from what you're saying, because I don't think
Or even the city
we're going to
locations.
go to prime industrial space.
Because some of the,
City and villages.
because some of the city and villages don't have prime industrial, they have old industrial.
Right, that may be nestled into a neighborhood, this, that, and the other, again, aren't
Yeah.
kind of class A in that
Yeah.
regard, but definitely valuable for these types of tenants.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I really like that idea,
Yeah.
something for us.
So it's something to think about.
The mentorship concept
Yeah.
too, so.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Any other questions, concerns, guys? Anything we want to, we'll invest this, make sure that we can get this to the individual members that didn't come. I think you already sent it, but.
I did, but I get them hard copies.
Yeah, because it's nice to be able to do this
And not
instead of
everyone-
trying to put it up, instead of trying to pull it up on a phone and trying to read a 11 by 17 spreadsheet
Definitely.
while you're driving. Dr. Odock, any questions, concerns, any trends, anything you want to potentially see in the future. I think we'll be talking about this at our next meeting, specifically about those ones that are coming due, but if there's anything that you have any questions on, or? Like I said, we could ask those questions at our next meeting as well, and, you know, if we have enough information, I think we would potentially be able to give direction, you know, vote on something. And if we don't, we could always do it the following one, or we could always call a special meeting, you know, there's different things we can do to get stuff done, but I think that, we have some great information, I think, once a presentation is made, I think, and when I say presentation, it's not really based upon what staff's opinion is, just showing the facts. You know, this is where we have such lease coming due, you know, blah, 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 and we need to make a decision. Are we going this way or are we going that way? That's what our part of being the board is. We make the decisions. We make the votes. We do it in a public setting, fully transparent. Simple enough.
But I think as we, you know, look at the future cost of this program, I think we also need to look at our future revenue. I mean, how many projects we have in the pipeline right now?
Yeah.
Got a couple, and
I know we'll talk about that
factors there, but-
next committee meeting, which is the audit finance one.
Yeah.
But that's a concern. I've been saying that all along. I mean, we've had now a couple meetings in a row with no applications. So it's always been a concern. I think we will get some. You know, knowing some stuff that's out in the planning board level. But, you know, that's a key part, Paul. I mean, we gotta make, you know, we wanna be self-sufficient. I always said this. I would hate the day to have to come knock on the legislature's door and say, hey, guys, gals, we don't have any more money. We need to now be part of the county budget. Oh, that's not what we're here for.
No, and there's no reason we shouldn't.
Right,
Exactly.
we've been too successful for that,
Yeah.
right.
This county has been too successful to have to warrant that.
Now, it will be interesting to see what excuses, do they have common reason why they don't meet up the obligations, or they blame it on pandemic, or?
I think you're gonna get some of that about the pandemic. I think part of it's the accountability. I mean, keep going back to that. They knew that people weren't minding the store. They knew that their focus was elsewhere, and I'm not saying that everyone was preying on that. I certainly don't mean that, but you know what I mean? You're not being asked for your rent. No one's following up on it.
Mhm.
Frankly, I haven't done it enough in my time here either, so they're gonna let it lapse. I do think holding them accountable and getting them on a plan. I've done that with a couple of more egregious ones, you know. We need to do it with everyone, as the chairman is saying, it's 90 days. So we're gonna get a variety of reasons, but, and some legitimate, some excuses, but, I think putting a process in place will be able to remedy a lot of this, I think. Or otherwise, we'll see who's not gonna be able to sustain themselves. All saying, it's not gonna work for them.
Right.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Should we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right, we're good to go.